Okay, I'm here with my good longtime friend, Teresa Caro. Teresa, how are you today?
I am great, Jeff. How are you?
It's so good to see you. It's been just a little bit.
It has. It is really good to see you.
Yeah. All right. Well, for those that don't know you, and I refuse to believe everyone watching this doesn't know who you are, but could you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Well, my name is Teresa Caro, and I founded an organization called Luminist, Liminist, and it is actually a combination of two words. Jeff, you and I have talked about this concept of liminal state, that area of being between and betwixt or on the threshold of something. And then the ist is specialist. So I am a specialist in the liminal state, which actually means I do executive coaching, team coaching, and actually do a little bit of group coaching as well.
Love it. Love it. And I love how you spell it nice and slow because you're gonna love this. This is how I spell Hillemeyer to people. Hilimire. And that's
Yes.
almost exactly how you did Luminist. I love it.
It's
Um,
so nice to have so many eyes in our name, right?
yeah, exactly. Right. So, and remind me, how long have you been running Luminist?
Oh, it's been a few years now. Can you believe it? Time
Crazy.
flies when you're having a good time.
It's awesome. Yeah, I love what you're doing with it, and that we've gotten to work together. So I asked you if you wanted to join me for a chat because you have an upcoming TEDx talk.
I do. In September 27th, that's the Saturday, I will be taking the stage at TEDx Buckhead Ave, which is at Modex. And yes, tickets are on sale with some amazing other speakers. It's going to be a great day.
It's awesome. So it's such a great honor to get asked. I know because I got to do one this year as well. And yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes for anyone who wants to sign up. Hopefully, people are going to attend. And it was the topic too that specifically I was very curious about. So I'll let you explain what your topic is about, and then I want to back up and talk about how you got this and the process you're in. But share with everybody the topic.
So the topic is about unapologetic prioritization, which is the act of choosing what matters most in the moment, which we'll talk about what matters most a little bit later in the show. But you do that without guilt, without justification, and without feeling like you failed somewhere else. Jeff, I know you like sharing about the process when it comes to doing TED Talks. And so that's not the final title. We'll be working on the final title soon. But that's what my talk is about.
It's such an interesting premise too, and again, it's why I wanted to grab you and chat about it, because I've subscribed to the decision making methodology of it's either a hell yes or a no,
Right.
um, which generally means like you should only be spending your time on things that are really important to you. And then you and I talk a lot about purpose, whether that's personal purpose or a company's purpose and where it should be focused. And you would apply that same lens to say, look, you need to be making decisions to work on things that are correct for you at that moment in time, correct for where you're headed. But what I don't hear talked a lot about around that is how to do that unapologetically. And I think that's the struggle I have the most is like I get asked to do certain things and I'm like, oh man, I don't want to hurt someone's feelings or but I know the right decision is this. So where did this idea come from? Like how long has this been stewing within you?
Oh, goodness. Years and years. Jeff, you may remember a long time ago, back when I used to work for you at Engage, you used to connect me with some of the younger employees, because you knew I lived what you perceived to be a balanced life. And so I go, sure, I'll go to coffee. And then the first thing I would say to them is, there is no such thing as a balanced life. I like to call it a prioritized life, because if you try to balance everything, then you completely burn out. And so, back then, where this all began, is what I was trying to convey to these younger employees is you need to prioritize what matters most to you right now. And a lot of them, they didn't have kids yet, they were barely married. And so at the time, I would recommend work as hard as you can, get as far as you can, as fast as you can, because there will become a time in your career where you're going to negotiate, again, what matters most to you. You're going to want to negotiate how your day is set up so you can continue to be a great leader and you can be that great parent, that great spouse, that great caretaker to an elderly parent, the things that need to be prioritized at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I also think, and I wonder if, now that you have stepped out into the world of entrepreneurship, how much even more important it can be to prioritize things and to do so unapologetically.
Well, and that's the easy part, Jeff. When you said you could go either hell yes or no, you and I run our own businesses. And so anybody listening to this podcast is probably saying, well, that's easy for you guys to say, but I work for this PE-backed firm, or I work for the startup, or I work for this publicly traded company that has shareholders. It becomes a little bit more difficult to be able to prioritize something and not feel like you failed in another place. And that's what I work with people and teams, and I'm doing this TED talk to try to get the message out of how we can do that and how it successfully, happens at companies. And what I'm excited about is that if you look back at the Purpose Playbook, the book that you and I wrote together, that's a framework that can actually help leaders and teams get crystal clear on what their priorities are so they can start there.
Yeah, I love it. So let's talk for just a moment about the book. We
Okay.
launched that book, was it last November?
September
September.
20th at the Conscious Capitalism event.
That's right. So we're almost a year in,
Yep.
to having the Purpose Playbook out. So why don't you give, since you started it, why don't you give the quick high level on what that book is about?
Well, Jeff, you wrote all these books about how to really set a framework called Purpose, Vision, Tenets, and Values. We like to abbreviate it and call it PVTV. So if you're ever in a conversation with Jeff and me, we always say PVTV. That's what it meant. And it was just, I love telling this story about how I launched my business a few years ago. I'm starting to think about the tools I wanted in my tool belt to help advertising agencies and brands be successful at business. And I knew PVTV was going to be essential. So I called you up, Jeff, and I said, hey, do you have any approach PDFs? And Jeff said, funny you should mention that. We're writing a playbook. So the Purpose Playbook are all the different steps that you need to take to get leaders and teams on the same page. And it's not easy. I think that's the challenge that a lot of people who pick up your books, Jeff, when they read the books and they learn about Shira and all the team members, they start thinking that they can do this, and then they come to realize it's really really hard to get everybody on the same page and in alignment. Wouldn't you say so?
100%. 100%. Yep.
So what I'm getting excited about is, okay, the Purpose Playbook, purpose and vision define the why, the what, and then you have, the tenets. Now you're getting into a bit of the how, and then we also go into the core values. And I like to think that the core values are that foundation. So if purpose, vision, and tenets gives the team clarity about what matters most. Remember, I said that I would define what matters most later. This is that point. What matters most to the team is going after that North Star, that purpose that we will never quite achieve, but we're all heading in the same direction. Achieving that vision, that 3 to 5 year plan with very specific either numbers or some kind of target, and then the tenets of how you're going to get there. So there's a lot of clarity. The core values help us figure out, okay, well, how are we going to tackle that? So what matters most? Let's give a common agency example. So many times I work with advertising agencies, or I work for Jeff at an advertising agency, and maybe one of the tenants is be known. And maybe one of the others is actually generate revenue from new business. So if my team is responsible for be known, and that's what matters most, but then we win a new piece of business, be known tends to take a back seat, right? And so this is that framework that helps us, that helps even our younger employees raise their hand and be like, all right, we have be known and we have generate revenue, and we're at a crossroads. So how do we sit down as a team and prioritize what matters most in this moment without killing ourselves, without completely
Mhm.
burning out? And so that's how I see those two pieces coming together.
And so it's almost like the unapologetic prioritization um, comes after. I mean, it doesn't have to, but it comes at certainly after you've created your PVTV, so that you can then know exactly what to focus on. Uh, what I love about that is I feel like you helped me see when we started working together on the Purpose Playbook and with your consultancy with Luminist, you were going further up the funnel to help leadership teams and leaders really find. I'm you have better ways to say this, but I feel like find their center, figure out
Mhm.
who they are. You coach them, right? And one of the things I learned from talking to you and hearing about your experiences is sometimes it's too early for a leadership team to take on this PVTV work. But now fast forward a couple years later, and what you've done is said, okay, once they have taken it on, here's how they can actually implement it or move it forward more effectively. So you've sort of taken this idea that I had the inklings of early, and you've expanded it really on both sides. Which thank you, I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And to expand on that, before you do PVTV, there's some critical communication skills that everybody needs to have. It's that concept of gaining clarity, gaining insight from lots of different people with lots of different communication styles. And then having that conflict conversation. Every time I say the word conflict, and this happens to me as well, as you go, oh, I don't like conflict. But there's a way to do conflict conversations that's constructive, that's beneficial. That, and Jeff, you and I saw it while we were testing this for the book. There were times where you would pause and say, before we go any further in this process, we have uncovered something that needs to be addressed. So let's take a moment to address it. And sometimes it's a moment, sometimes it's a full-on
Mhm.
pause where other steps and measures need to be taken. So that's the front part. That starts to generate that vulnerability based trust. And then you get to that commitment, the commitment you make to one another for PVTV, and you start learning how to hold each other accountable. And then you get to the unapologetic prioritization, because now you're able to, doesn't matter where you are in the organization, raise your hand and say, I have no idea what we're prioritizing in this moment.
Mhm.
Let's get together and let's review it and make sure we're on the same page again.
Yeah. You are, let's see, it is August 11th. Your talk's on the 27th of September. Is that what you said?
Yes.
So you're getting really close. So
Yes.
question I have for you, and I want to talk about the process a little bit and then jump back into sort of this thesis. But uh, when I started talking to Jackie about being a part of TEDx Atlanta earlier this year, we started talking last year. I didn't have a fully fleshed out idea of what I wanted to talk about. I had talked to her over the years about different concepts, and so as she shared the theme, and then sort of interviewed me in the coaching sessions and stuff, she helped tease out what ultimately became Dream Small, which was my topic, and which is basically the story of 48 and 48. But I didn't come into it with like a clear, solid foundation for what I wanted to discuss. Where were you in that process? Was this something you talked to them and you're like, this is the thing, or did they help coach it out of you?
It was an interesting journey. So backing up a second, before I was introduced to TEDx Buckhead Ave, I actually met a woman by the name of Corrine Canty, who actually, as luck would have it, is one of the coaches at TEDx Buckhead Ave. She and I got to know each other through different organizations. And as I was starting to figure out what was on my vision board, TED Talk was on my vision board. I reached out to her because I knew she did a lot of speaking training and TED Talk training. And she said that she was forming a TED Talk coaching group. So I joined that. That to me was the best place for me to start because there's no pressure of, oh no, I got to memorize. Oh no, and I'll talk about those steps in a moment. It was really a great opportunity for me to meet with other people who had visions of creating a TED Talk. And then Corrine took us through a series of steps to help us think through what makes a good topic. And we were able to go big and do mind mapping and lots of research and brainstorming and then narrow it down, which it sounds like what Jackie did with you. And I had the initial start to a talk enough to start applying to different TED programs. And that's one of the things that a lot of TED Talk coaches recommend to you is apply to several different programs and explain to them. So obviously, I wanted to be Atlanta based. I'm here. It would be nice to be home based. I applied to or attempted to apply to the Georgia State one. I'm a Georgia State grad. And if TEDx Buckhead Ave didn't come to fruition, I was going to look at Villanova or Pennsylvania or New York. So that's the second step, is to start looking at the TED website and seeing where TED Talks are taking place and start applying to different programs that make sense to you. Step 3 is yeah, you're right, Jeff. You get there and with 7 other great speakers, and some of them, they're at different levels of completedness, and the coaches help them complete their talk. And then we're also working on stagecraft. So
Mhm.
for TEDx Buckhead Ave, and everyone is different, so I can't speak to TEDx Atlanta, but for TEDx Buckhead Ave, it is a series of 4-hour workshops. We all get together as coaches. We have, not coaches, we all get together with our coaches as speakers. And then 2 coaches listen to us do different parts of our talk, and they work on our voice, our stagecraft. Where are we? How do we use our hands? How do we pause? And then they also work with us on the visuals that are going on behind us. And then there are very strict deadlines. So on August 18th, Monday, August 18th, I will be on that stage, fully memorized, not done from a stagecraft perspective, but fully memorized. So then, and then next month following, I can work on how do I want to say the words? Where do I want to be on stage? Where are my visuals showing up? So it's a really, it's an intense process to get to what you actually finally see when it goes live on the TED website.
Yeah. Okay. So some of that's the same, some of that's different. It sounds like yours was much more of group. Ours was never group. I never saw any of the other speakers until the day of. Although there was like a mixer I couldn't go to. But did I tell you what happened the day before my talk?
No, no, do share.
Yeah, we're gonna do a bit of a diatribe here because I feel like I'm about to share maybe your worst nightmare, somebody's worst nightmare.
Oh,
So,
goodness.
so when I did my first run through, to your point, not having memorized it, but on a stage and just so they could hear it, afterwards, Jackie said, okay, that felt like about 12 minutes. And I said, okay, great. So then I got paired with the next coach. So I had Jackie at the beginning for a while, and then I got paired with my next coach. And what she worked with me on was, going slower, taking my time, emphasizing a certain point, and really elongating it so that it was a better speech. Right. And so I worked and worked and worked. I got it to 14 minutes from the original 12 minutes. I got it to 14. And I was practicing it. And the other thing this coach was working with me on was, to your point, like sort of stage presence and like literally, okay, you ought to walk to this side of the stage for this part, stay there, maybe back up, just there's a science to it all. Right. So I've got all that. I've been practicing, and I don't know where you'll get in terms of memorization, but I memorized it. I recited it 100 times if I did it once, like in the car,
Yep.
every time I was driving,
Yep.
So then the event's on Friday. I show up on Thursday at the venue. So they give us like, we each get to get on stage and for, 12 minutes, just feel out the stage, figure out what the mic feels like. You don't get to do your talk, but you get to feel it out. So first thing is I walk out and I'm standing there and I got the mic and they're like, "Can you hear me?" I'm like, "Okay, yeah." And then I see there's a monitor way in, sort of behind the crowd, the first level of crowd, and it has where my slides will be. So I'll get to see at least where I am with my slides. And there's a clock. And so I said, "Oh, what's that clock for?" And the lady goes, "Oh, that's your countdown clock." And I said, "Oh, I didn't realize there was going to be a countdown clock. So what is mine?" And she said, 12 minutes.
Yeah.
And I had 14 minutes that I had been working towards.
Well, and what's funny about that is it's for the people who are listening, people might say, "Oh, it's 2 minutes, who cares?" That 2 minutes is impossible
Oh
to
my gosh.
find. I just found it this morning because I was at 14 minutes and I'm trying to get down to 11
Yeah.
before we do the stagecraft. And I could not, every time I meet with Corey, I'm like, I cannot find those few minutes. I cannot find it. I don't know what I did, but somehow I fit. And so I don't, what
But
did you do?
well, can you imagine that was 24 hours before my talk?
Exactly. That you've
I,
already memorized.
I had it memorized word for word, inflection for inflection. So I had to cut
Exactly.
2 minutes. And the other thing was when I walked out, I go to, they say, stand in the middle. Where in the middle, there was like a very small red circular little carpet.
Mhm.
And they were like, "Okay." And I was about to walk off and they're like, "Just make sure when you give your talk, don't move off that carpet." And I was
Oh,
like, what? Like I've been practicing moving around a stage. I had literally, you just couldn't move.
yeah,
But I figured it out. It all went fine. But I just remember thinking, holy smokes, I had to go home and find 2 minutes to cut. Like that's insane.
yeah.
The other thing I said is I said, "Well, what happens if you go over your time?" And she goes, "Oh, it's really not a problem. You get 10 extra seconds and then they cut your mic." What's happening? I found out later that possibly that's just a rumor to scare you. But anyways, it all worked out. It was great. Kept me on my toes. Let's get back to the topic at hand. So one of the things that you have shared with me in sort of the way you've been thinking about this talk and the way it relates to the Purpose Playbook and leadership teams is, and I'm going to describe it as stress rolls downhill.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that concept? Because it's honestly, I've always thought about the fact that as a leader, everybody's sort of looking at you to see how you're going to react to things. But I didn't really think of it in the terms and the depth that you have been.
Well, and so to not go into the stress part first and keep it light, which is where
Okay.
we were, I do want to point out there's a great episode of a TV show called How I Met Your Mother. And it's, if you go on YouTube, search on Circle of Screaming or Chain of Screaming. It actually says Circle or Chain of Screaming. If you watch the whole thing, you'll understand why at the end. But it's a great visualization of what happens in this world. I coach a lot of people at PE firms, and you have the investor who's, or, publicly traded firms. So you have the board, and they're looking at the numbers and they're stressed out about the numbers. And what do? All stressed out and completely hijacked. They pick up the phone and they start yelling at the CEO. And then the CEO collects their leadership team together and they start calling out different people. Well, if that doesn't trigger a leader, I don't know what does, being completely called out in front of their peers. And then that leader, if they have not been through my coaching program, then takes that stress and anxiety and calls their leadership team together and starts yelling at them. The How I Met Your Mother episode talks about how then they go home and they yell at their spouse, and then the spouse, who's a teacher, goes and yells at the kids, and then the kid then yells at their dad, who is actually the CEO of the company was talking about, thus the circle of screaming. But that's the whole thing around it, how it rolls downhill. If you bring it back to unapologetic prioritization and the Purpose Playbook, if everyone, all the way up to the top, to that PE person or the investor or the board, if everybody's in alignment with what the purpose is, the vision, the tenets, and the core values. That isn't to say that no one's going to get upset at the numbers, but it is to say that the conversation might go differently. Going back to unapologetic prioritization, I like to say in the talk, say what you need, share what you give. And that's, get on the call. And if that one person starts with, I need this to be successful, this is what I'm going to give you to help us both be successful. If we start with that, if we lean into empathy and curiosity, it might be a different conversation that, you know what? And I'm not going to go into the whole brain science of it, but then we move from the protection part of our brain to the prefrontal cortex, creativity, innovation. Now we're having an innovative conversation, a problem solving kind of conversation that everybody gets off the phone and feels so energized. And then now that chain or circle is completely different because now you have innovative ideas coming into that leadership team meeting. And the leadership team knows that they can talk about what they like about the idea and then build upon that. And then they go to and so now instead of a rolling downhill circle of screaming, now we have a circle of creativity and innovation.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I keep coming back to this. You said it earlier, the importance of communication in sort of all of this. Leadership teams at companies, companies overall. There's a lot of dysfunction on the communication side of things, and it does seem like
Yes.
if you're boiling down some of what we do in the Purpose Playbook doesn't exist in somebody's head yet.
Right.
Maybe as we drill out the purpose side of things, maybe that is something that, we have to work with the teams to build out to really figure out the why of the organization. But the vision probably does exist in the CEO's head, for instance, and it's just not getting out. And the way to execute on that stuff might live within the leadership team. It's just not getting out. And what you just discussed is it's like the more we can have empathetic communication, the more these companies and teams will be working in concert, working toward a common goal. I'm curious though, as we as we build on that, am I simplifying unapologetic prioritization too much to say that then that becomes I almost want to say kind of the how of how things start to get done? You map it back against the PVTV?
Well, I'd say the how as it relates to the core values. If you think about the importance of the core values, so you have lots of companies, Jeff. Name your favorite core values, or even name one favorite core value. What would that be?
Practice empathy.
Okay, practice empathy. So you are an investor of several different organizations. Your favorite core value is practice empathy. You see the numbers come across your desk. You are irate because this is a complete surprise to you. You pick up the phone. How do you practice empathy?
Yeah. In that example, probably trying to understand where that leader that I've reached out to is, what has caused the company not to hit its numbers, trying to find the root of it versus, the blame game.
Right. Would you say I'm sorry if you show up irate to this call?
Oh my gosh. Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Well, here's the thing is there's different kinds of I'm sorry's.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
what comes back to the unapologetic. If you show up to a call and you chew this person out and you hang up the phone and you're like, dude, what, that wasn't good. And you call them back and you say, I'm sorry. That's not the kind of I'm sorry's that
Right.
I'm talking about.
Right.
The
Right.
kind of I'm sorry's I'm talking about is when you've done nothing wrong. The kind of I'm sorry, you're trying to practice this, this
Mm,
kind of core value, and you call up and you're like, sorry to bug you, man. I know you got a lot on your plate. That's the kind of I'm sorry's I'm talking
mm,
about.
mm.
I'm talking about you getting on the phone and saying, this is stressing me out. I'm seeing the numbers. It's not what we talked about. That person then might say, Jeff, oh, I'm so sorry, dude. I'm letting you down. They haven't done anything. Well, as far as you know, they haven't
Yeah.
done anything wrong. it's giving them the permission to say, here's what's going on, here's what's changed the last time. That's what I'm looking for, is can we go into that conversation not saying I'm sorry, not making anybody signaling that we failed in any way until we've proven whether or not we failed, but not signaling that we failed. Going in with curiosity, with empathy, with innovation and creativity. That's what I want people to get into. That's what matters most. And then if you ladder that up, that's unapologetic prioritization.
Yeah, awesome. Are you what's your hope? What's your biggest hope as people come watch this talk and then watch it on on video later? But like, what do you want people to walk away? What behavior do you want them to change the most when they walk away from your talk?
Well, first is recognizing how often they say, I'm sorry. There's a lot of great stats, 78 times a day, over 3,000 times a year. We unconsciously say, I'm sorry. And that chips away at us. It chips away at our belonging. It chips away at so many different things. So that's my number one thing, is a lot of times awareness is number one. So that's yeah, number one. Number two is to hold each other accountable. We might not hear ourselves say, I'm sorry. Heck, I say it all the time, and I'm the one giving the talk. I had to break myself of the habit of saying I'm sorry in the talk,
Yeah.
of certain things that I was sharing. So it's holding each other accountable. This isn't so the TEDx Buckhead Ave in June was the power of she. TEDx Buckhead Ave in September is the power of we.
Hmm.
This is not something that we can do on our own. It is something that we need to do as a community, at home, at work, in our circles. We really need to help each other prioritize what matters most. And sometimes that is, someone at home is going to have to make a meal or take care of carpool because we're not making them the numbers. But it's really holding each other accountable together as a team. I'd say those are the top two things I'd want people to take away. There's three things they can do and different things like that, but those are the things I'm hoping to take away. All right, anybody who's listening, Jeff just texted me to let me know his computer completely shut off. Um, so I am going, hopefully that end helped you understand what is unapologetic prioritization and the two key things that I hope you take away from it. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at the event. And I hope that you'll reach out to me to talk about this topic more. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye bye.